the social hub to the renovated residence, of course, which is the Central Avenue Methodist Church. I'm sure you've all driven by it at one time or another, or a number of times. So tonight we'll be talking about the beginnings of the church, the early days of the church, the social center, the Foursquare Gospel Church, the Freestyle School, and the residence. And as you notice, if I can make the this is the picture of the original church. And if you look at the church today, you've got the same roof line, the same windows, the steeple with the bell up there. So you don't see too many changes from the present day to what it was originally, with the exception it had shingles on it, and those have been removed. So as we were going through this, I was thinking, you know, that church, if the walls could only talk. They've heard so many things. They've heard sermons, they've seen weddings, they've seen funerals, they've seen social gatherings, you know, because that was the way the families got together. They were so far apart, they came together at the church with their children. So they had a lot of fun gatherings, and they probably even heard a little bit of gossip along the way. But back in 1890, on our first timeline for 9060 Central Avenue, the Methodist Episcopal congregation is started. They were wanting to get together some religious services. They felt like they needed to have a church. Now you notice this is 1890, before even the Orangevale colony was started. So there wasn't too many people here. And so they began to use the Orangevale schoolhouse for their services. But they started on July 5th. We're just right at that date. And there was a pastor, Reverend G.G. Walters. He was the pastor in Folsom. And he came across to serve as a pastor in Orangevale too. And as you notice, there were charter members were the Carmichaels, the Thompsons, the Wilkersons, the Canfields, and the Landis family. And then as more people came in, it included the Copelands and the Thorpes and the Foxes. So that gave them more people to develop for the church. And this is just a notice in the paper which verifies that Reverend Walter, the name is misspelled here, was preaching on Sunday morning and Sunday evening at the usual hours in the Orangevale school, because they had to use the school for their services. Now this was in 1891. In our early days, the first church that really was built was a Presbyterian church in 1897. Now that was built at on Central and Pecan at the corner, which is now the Baptist church location. I don't think it was the original building. Sometimes the Methodists would borrow their building for meetings, so they had two places they could meet then. They could either meet at the elementary school or at the Presbyterian church if it was available. And they do talk here about the pastor preaching on Saturday evening. And here they talk about the young folks that attended the Methodist church on Sunday evening. This was a great place for the children to come, or the teenagers to gather. They look forward to doing that. There's some names etched on here. I hope we have a better picture of it a little later.
Oops. So now we have the church being finally built. The Board of Trustees came together in 1895 to try to get money and land to build a church, but in fact they didn't succeed in that until 1905. And then 1906, the church was open. Let's get to the, yeah. So there you can see the church. and it says here, improvements at Orangevale. And it's describing the church being built. And I love the description at the end. It says, the new church is a neat, modern structure and a credit to Orangevale. And I think I'd agree with them, because I still see it as being a credit to Orangevale. And the church was dedicated in September, and the Reverend Eli McLeish, who was a Doctor of Divinity and the president of the University of the Pacific, he officiated. So there were things happening all day. 10:20 there was a sermon, in the afternoon there was a dedication, and then in the evening there were more sermons and talks, and I'm sure in between times there would be a lot of eating going on as well, because that's what they, now this, I love this one. Let's see if I can do the arrow.
One of your phones is ringing.
It's not mine.
It's mine.
It ain't mine. There's the Presbyterian
it
church
off.
that was built.
No, it stopped.
This is 1911 this was taken.
Stick it further in.
And look how empty the whole place is. I mean, this land here, this land was Landis land. That eventually became the next home of the Methodist Church. And here, that is the church building. And Mark has very kindly called this building, he called it the powder room. I call it the outhouse. And it's sited quite a long way from the church, and I would think for very good reason. And this photograph was taken from the top of the school building, which is there, which is at the time was a 2-story building with a bell tower, and was later taken down to a single story, which I think is a great loss. I think that's a beautiful 4-square building.
Where was that sitting?
That was sitting
Where the school is?
Where the
Or
school is
the
now.
school is.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
the original. That was the second school. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The land, we believe, was donated by somebody called Steinman, but we can't find any record of him anywhere, or of that family anywhere. Or I haven't come across them anyway. The important stuff there was that L.H. Landis was the superintendent of Sunday school for a very long time, and his daughter helped teach there as well, and she was the superintendent for 45 years. I mean, this is a family that made tremendous contribution to Orangevale. And that as a social hub, well, I mean, there's the Sunday school having a Halloween party. There's the Mary Martha Circle having a chili supper. So there were women's groups, Sunday schools. I'm sure there were youth groups. I'm sure there were things happening on a weekend. And it must have been a very active place for the people of Orangevale. And that the church does have an acre of land behind it, and I can visualize kids running all over the place, having a whale of a time. Sorry? Yeah, I'd be worried there. Thought I was supposed to dance or something.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Want to make sure I'm out of the way because I was in Marilyn's way over there. I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, I'll stand here. Yeah.
Well, this is our next timeline, and you notice we've moved forward quite a ways. We moved to 1966. This is when the Foursquare Church, and it's called Foursquare Gospel Church, takes over the property. And they kind of partner still with the Methodist Church. They hold concurrent events. This one here says Cruz, who was a former New York teen gang member, was speaking at the Foursquare Gospel Church in the morning, or in the evening, and then it was going tomorrow to the First Methodist Church. And we find several articles. This one is about an Orangevale evangelist will conduct a series of revival meetings. And I can just imagine them setting up a tent for the week out behind the church for these revival meetings, continuing every night. But the Foursquare Gospel Church lasted there only 10 years. And this knob here, if I can point it out, well, you'll just see it. The knob on the right is one of the original knobs in the church. The Careys, who own the house now, have kept the original knobs on all the doors, except for a couple where they were missing. And so they're still looking for some knobs that look original. Whoops, pressed it too soon. We know that in between 1956, when the new sanctuary for 9041 Central Avenue and the new Methodist church that was built, they continued between 1956 and 1966. The Methodists still own this property, and they still continued to use it for events. And we can see that through newspaper articles. One of them being that in 1963, they held the Landis funeral at the Methodist Church at 9060 Central Avenue, which was the original church. Okay.
And we're looking at what we think was a school that was part of the Foursquare. They were in the building at the same time as the Foursquare. And it's a school called the Desiderata School. I would call it an alternative school now, but then it was a school without grades, 10 to 18-year-olds, freestyle, there you go. And they had no grades. They could decide on what aspect of education they studied, which could be interesting, because they might decide to do nothing. And that's possible, I would think. And I love the cost. Tuition is 9% of adjusted monthly gross income for 9 months. That's how much you would pay. So, and that was in the B in 1976. And we lose sight of the Desiderata School around that time, about 1978, I think.
Yeah.
Just 1980.
One more time there.
Yeah, and that's it. There it is, up to 1978. Yeah, that's what we suspected. I wonder who went and what happened to them, because they might learn absolutely nothing. Okay, modern times. Oh, the Bell family. Yeah, that's you.
So we're now to 1980. So somewhere between 1978 and 1980, there was property was being sold, and the Bell Family Trust purchased it.
That was a ride.
Now some of you may remember seeing this etched window in Facebook. Mark had posted it saying, does anyone know anyone who would have been named Anna that would have etched this window? This window is still, they kept the window at the residence, and the names are still etched into it. So we're figuring that it probably happened in either the 70s or 80s, because we never got any firm information online. So, but in addition to Anna, there's Roy, Riley, Lillian, and Inez. So what happened and why they did it? Were they partying? Were they students at the school? Were they residents in the house? We don't know. And so until one of them come forward, it'll be a mystery. So this is the Bell Family Trust. They were the first deed that we found recorded. It was Reed Bell and Mary Christine Morse Bell. Now, Mary was an artist by some accounts. Some people we've talked to called her a hippie, but I can just see her as an artist in the sanctuary of that home with all the windows that would be very light and probably a great place to paint.
Mary was my landlord. I lived in the parsonage there for
Oh,
6 years.
okay.
And yeah, she was a hippie.
She was a
An
hippie.
artist. She would have some shows there periodically.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And then she had the shingles put on the outside too.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The shingles, yes.
Very nice lady.
Okay, so our comment was, so that it can be captured, was that Mary was definitely definitely a hippie, and she had the shingles put on the house. Okay, and she was a very nice lady. You weren't in the house when the etching was done on the window, I take it.
Not owning up to it.
I don't know one of those people.
And as you notice, we've got another picture over here of where the church was and some houses and things. It looks a little different now. It's been filled in a little bit, more houses around. There's still a lot of trees in that area.
Do you know when the parsonage was built? Because it's not there in the early pictures at all.
No.
No, okay.
Okay. We're assuming the parsonage was built in the 40s or 50s. Mm-hmm. We did find some news articles where people were living at 60 in the 58s and 59s, and they were having babies. So we found the birth announcements in the paper, so we're assuming it was definitely there in the 50s. So we're just not sure when that was built, but it's still there. After the Bell family, David Anderson bought the property in 2004. We really know nothing about David Anderson or what he did in the home. Anderson then sold it to a Russian fellow, because I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, in 2007. The idea was they were going to open a Russian church. And so they started doing some renovation on it. They replaced the windows
in the
sanctuary, and fortunately they replaced them with dual pane windows, and they did not cut them down or change them in any way. They left them in their natural format, so that still left it as an old historic building. The foreclosure followed shortly after 2008 or 9, and then the Carey family bought it in 2010. Now, they owned a house here in Orangevale, so they weren't in a hurry to move into it. So they rented the property as it was for a number of years, until just recently.
Click it on.
Okay.
And Mark's call this bit renovation. I would call it restoration, because it would have been, I'm sure, cheaper to pull the whole thing down and start again. Because it was in a worse state than they thought. The sanctuary floor when they moved in was nice and level, and they wanted to put a new floor in. They took it up and discovered it was concave because all of the foundations were collapsing and the side walls were beginning to move out. And then at the same time, the roof of the sanctuary was also collapsing, so they had to put beam structures in. So it was a very expensive restoration.
And they did this work themselves.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, everything that they could, they kept to the original moldings. They took time to get it done. They took all the shingles off because the shingles weren't original, and put the siding back up. That piano, we think, could be the original piano because it was dated in
They stopped making them in 1930.
Yeah, but we think that could be the original one. And this the Carey family are very musical, so that piano is still being played. And this is the view when you walk in. And all of this, the stair rails they had to put up, these, all the baseboards, all the mouldings around the windows, all had to be replaced, and they did it all in the original style. They were very, very careful to keep to the original style.
Was that staircase and everything original?
Yes, the staircase was original, but I believe there were no railings across the top there.
Yeah.
That area was open.
Yeah, they said there was an organ up there or something.
Might have been a choir loft or something.
Could be, well,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
also mentioned there was a ladder that you had to climb to get up there.
yeah. Yeah, and this is the sanctuary as it is now. So they kept it pretty much. That was original, and these windows are original. The windows that the Russian replaced were these side ones, which I'm sure saved them quite a bit of money. And this is the view from the kitchen back through. And this family very carefully has a lot of antique furniture, so it's very much in style. It was a really excellent visit, wasn't it? I think that's it. And they let us ring the church bell, which we found extremely exciting. We were like kids.
We didn't just do it once.
No. And then they took us out to the back where they've got this acre of land, and the only job they've really done there is remove a 1/4 acre of bamboo that was going mild, and that was a big undertaking. So they've got a lot of work to do back there. Somebody, it must have been Mary Bell, has raised beds back there.
I think she did.
Yeah, I couldn't see anybody else having done them.
No.
It would fit with the hippie lifestyle to grow their own food. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.